After going through some basic concept on cost and relevant concepts, now we turn to the beginning of the most basic concept of engineering economics. That is, so for this chapter, we're going to look at economic equivalence. So we are going to see what do we mean by economic equivalence, and it's done by some computational transformation to validate that different cash flows are of economic equivalence. Also, we will look at why do we need to establish an economic equivalence. And then we'll see how we can establish an economic equivalence. So economic equivalence can exist between two different cash flows in the sense that they have the same economic effect. Right? They can buy the same, they have its same economic value and can therefore trade it for one another because they are of equivalent economic values, right? And the timing on the cash flow can differ a lot. It could be now, it could be present, it could be a series of cash flow and occur at different time. And if we have a way to summarize them, and the summarization of these two series of cash flow, if they are of economic equivalence, they should in the end come to an equivalence. So for example, in the following two diagram, the top one, we have two, if you still remember our cash flow diagram, going up is income. So we have two incoming cash flow. One is 20,000, the other is 50,000, and they occur at two different time points. One is present and the other is after 10 years. And we look at the below one. Below one has 10 different receipts, and each is equal to 8,000. So if I ask you which one is more preferable, and if we cannot find the equivalence of one or the other, then it will be very difficult to compare. And here, in fact, we cannot answer the question yet, because it really depends on what kind of interest rate we are considering. When the interest rate is very high, then 50,000 for the first diagram and will not mean too much. Future values will not worth that much. So it really depends on what kind of interest rate we are adopting, so that we can convert the cash flow into something that we can compare. And with different interest rate, the outcome could be different. Here we can take an example. Here, if we are considering the interest rate of 9% over a 5 years period, we have three different kinds of payments. Plan 1, you can see that we are paying 5 equal payments. Right? Each one is a little bit more than 5,000. Right? And if we do it in a different way, for example, in Plan 2, we see that if we have we receive that payment at the end of the 5th year, then the amount that we see is more than 30,000. If you multiply the numbers in Plan 1, 5,141.85 times 5, it comes to not even 26,000. But for Plan 2, we are seeing 30,000. So the reason is there's a interest rate. So 5,141 for in Plan 1 on the first year is in fact a lot bigger than what the number reflects. So if you think of that, that is a lot bigger, and it's gradually smaller. But if you increase the value of scale the value of each year, and then add them to the 5th year, if you are using interest rate of 9%, it should come to the same number as what the Plan 2 shows. For Plan 3, we have 4 equal payments, which are much smaller than 5,000, but the last payment is more than 20,000. Again, if we use interest rate 9% to consider the value or the worth of individual cash flow, and because of the time they are occurring at different time, so their worth will be different. So when we adjust their value based on the interest rate, and then we sum them up again at the end of the 5th year, the value will be the same as that of Plan 2, which is more than 30,000. So that's the kind of things that we are seeing very often in real life. These 3 plans look quite different, and if you try to add them together and try to compare them, you may get some decision, but then that decision will be wrong if you don't consider time value of money. And again, for these 3 plans, the numbers you are seeing are in fact reflecting an interest rate of 9%, so that Plan 1, Plan 2, and Plan 3 are of the same value. They are economic. They are of economic equivalence. As you can see here, so the payment, if we sort of break them out, you can probably see what is shown here, because these payments occur at different times. So if we add them together, you can see different numbers. But if we sort of break them down, you can see that, oh, because you are receiving them earlier, so you are paying less interest, and if you didn't get anything until the end, this payment that you pay, you only pay at the end of the 5th year, so you are only owing more money within the the 5 years, so you need to pay more interest. So plan 3, you are paying not as much as plan 2, but you are paying more than plan 1 because you are paying back a lot less along the way. So that's another way to look at why their numbers are different and what does that mean. Again, if you are paying back a loan, you are returning the money in a lump sum payment after a certain time, then the accumulation of the interest will be much higher than if you pay them back earlier and gradually. So in order to analyze these equivalence, we need to use some notation so that we can communicate better. And what we usually do is to have present value represented by P, future value represented by F, and here we have two equivalent values. One is, let's just assume that you lend the money to somebody else at the present time. That is, you have money outgoing, and it's going down, and after n period of time, this person will return the money back to you. So we want to see by then how much money that you will get from this other person. So as you can see in the blue part, P stands for the money that you lend to somebody else. The borrower at time n, when the borrower wants to return the money to you, it will accumulate the interest for n periods, and in the end, the principal and the interest need to be paid back to you at the same time. So it can be computed as, for every period, your value, your worth will be 1 plus I% more. So the total will be 1 plus I for n periods, so it will be to the power of n. And you can imagine that reversely, if we want to get the present value of a certain amount n period away, we can use the orange equation. So you have a sum of f at the end of n, and you want to know its amount at the time 0, which is present. You just need to use f times 1 plus I to the minus n power, then you can get the value P. So we have briefly described the conversion of two cash flow at different time point. Let's have a more detailed description of the steps. Let's just say we have two equivalent cash flow. What we need to do, if we want to convert them, what we need to do is, first of all, what will be the length of the period, the duration, and how far apart in terms of time they are, so that we can convert to the future, or from the future convert it to the present, or any time along the timeline. Once we have the period, then we need to identify the interest rate to use, because different interest rate represents different increase of the value or decrease of the value. So we need to determine that so that we can create a number which is equivalent to the current one. Then we can calculate the equivalence value. So let's just say we consider the period a period of 5, and there's again between this blue and this pink or orange cash flow, they are 5 periods apart. And if we use interest rate 6%, so if we use present value 2042 to compute the cash flow at the end of the period 5, this is what we'll do. We use 2042 times 1 plus 6% to the 5th power. Okay. And you will get 2,733. Okay. But if you look at the figure part, it's 3,000 there. So maybe we can try a different interest rate. And we use interest rate 8%. And then we can also calculate the equivalent value at the end of the 5th period. And through the computation, it turns out to be 3,000. So if you look at the figures, we can see two numbers. One is 2,000, the other is 2,042, the other is 3,000. They are equivalent. Okay? If we say that they are equivalent, which means that they are equivalent under the assumption that the interest rate is 8%. But if the interest rate is only 6%, then 3,000 is of greater value than 2042. 3,000 at the end of the 5th year is of greater value than 2042 at the present time. And if we are considering 10%, then 3,000 at the end of period 5 is in fact with less value than 2042 at the present time. So the use of the interest rate will influence our conversion of the value, and they could also be causing our judgment, like making wrong judgment. And again, if we have this 5,000 and we know that we are using 8% as the interest rate, and not only 3,000 at the end of the 5th year can be converted effectively to a value at the present time, it can be converted to any time. It can be converted to the 4th year, the 3rd year, the 2nd year, and the first year. And the conversion follows the same approach. That is, depending on how far away you are from the new destination, then you will use different kinds of different periods for the conversion. Okay, so from the end of period 5 to present time, we can use 3000 times 1 plus 8% to the minus 5 power. And if we are converting 3000 to from the period 5 to period 4, then we only need to have minus 1 power. So the value will still be relatively big. But all 6 values, as you can see, at the present time, at the end of the first year, second year, third year, fourth year, and fifth year, they are all economically equivalent, because they are through the conversion, that capture the essence of the time value of money. And based on the previous conversion, we can also say that we can convert 3000 to the present time for the comparison. Similarly, we can convert 2042 from the present time to the fifth year, so that we get 3000. In fact, doesn't matter where we are, we can convert them to the same point, and that same point should have the same value, worth the same amount as wherever it was converted from. So if we take the upper one, we convert 2042 from present time to the end of the third year. The value comes to 2572. Then we look at 3000. We know that 3000 is what converted by 2042 to the computation in the previous slide. So they are of economic equivalence. Okay, so 3000 is of the equivalent at the end of period 5 is of the same value of 2042 at the present time. So if we convert 3000 from the end of fifth period to the end of the third period, the value should be, because they are again 3000 and 2042 at different point, these are of the same value, worth the same value. So we use 3000 converted to the end of the third period, the number should come up to 2572, the same as the one that were converted from 2042 to the end of the third period. Okay, so it doesn't matter where you are, if you are of the same equivalence of another value, when both of you are converted to the same time point, and the value appear in these two cash flow should be the same, should be identical. Now we can look at equivalence calculation for multiple payments. Let's just look at the option 1, where we have 3 payments of the equal amount, 100. If we want to know their future value at the end of period 3, what should we do? And what will be the number? If we are again taking a certain interest rate, here we use 10%. So in order to get an equivalent value at the end of period 3, individual cash flow need to be computed for the future value. So 100 at the end of period 1 need to be converted to the value of value 3. So you need to have 2 accumulation of the interest. Okay, which is this. As we shown before, it will be to the second power of 2, and you get 121. And from the end of period 2 to the end of period 3 is just one period, so multiply by just 1.1 and get 110. And for the third one, because it's right at the tiny point, so it doesn't need to be changed, so it's still 100. If you add them together, you get 331. So what we said is that these are three cash flow of the same value, 100. When we have interest rate 10%, it is equivalent to 331 at the end of the third year. So with multiple payment, we can convert them one by one to the same point and add them together, and that will give us the equivalent value.